by the way.
Okay, right on. Well, we're live. We're live with State of the Network. This is something that BFGNeil and I have been talking about for a little while, kind of putting together something where we get together once a week and do either a vlog or a podcast and then bring in other folks. Today we got Keenan and Big Dave Akers. We think maybe bringing Dave in on the regular for an update on Helium analytics might be super cool and helpful to those of you who are trying to understand the network. But that's what we got. So fucking A. Welcome to the show, guys.
Hey,
I'm psyched. We've got a bunch of stuff to cover. You want to hit the Senate stuff first, Neil? Because I missed the implication of that being worldwide, being American centric.
yes, the Senate have signed now fully, so they're fully onboarded onto the network. But before, the Senate network was only the states, so now they've got worldwide roaming on a network that already has a load of sensors being able to run on Helium now, and that's all switched on. So the amount of traffic that we're going to be doing over the next few months is going to go up by factors, and it's just unbelievable. In 1 month of one sign on, we're just going to be doing so much data. So it's just amazing news. It's quite surprising, and I know this is just so rare for us. We can never talk price, but the price hasn't reacted to this. It's unbelievable because it's
It's
so
gone
much
down.
data coming on board. Yeah, there's so much data coming on board that it just means that the network's starting to be used what it was designed for in a very large scale. So it's just huge news.
Yeah, it's super cool. And I think this whole IoT thing is so new to people who come into Helium that they don't understand the implication of the whole thing. And so they're like, oh, that sounds cool. Like, whatever. I like, is it going to affect my mining? And it won't affect how much HNT you mine, but it will affect how much data credits are used. And I guess if you use enough of them, that'll affect mining. But it's more like the network that we've spent the last 2 years building is actually getting ready to be used.
Yeah, exactly. And people always complain that their POC earnings are going down, but they don't realize that they could go up if we push data. So we could replace all of those lost POC earnings with data, but we just have to get use cases out there. And this is a huge one
Yeah.
that's just being switched on like that.
Yeah.
At
Unbelievable.
the moment, there's provision for like 35% of rewards to go to data, and we're currently running at 0.02%. So that there is a massive upside.
Yeah, let's dig into that a little bit because I think a lot of folks don't get that. So a third, actually, Dave, you want to walk us through what that means?
Yeah. So what we've got at the moment is we've got a situation where rewards are distributed between various parties. So you've got your proof of coverage rewards, obviously, that are available. You've got consensus rewards for validators and security rewards that go to the investors, basically. But there's 35% of rewards are allocated for use of data credits. So taking sensor data, I lied actually. I'm just looking at analytics, and we've got 0.03% yesterday used. So that there's 35% available for data credits, and if they don't get used, they get spread around the proof of coverage rewards. But as Neil says, if we get more data credits being used, then we won't have those proof of coverage reward issues that people are suffering. So the more sensors and data we get transferring, the better it will be for everybody that's got a hotspot in an area where there are sensors.
Yeah,
Uh,
super
and,
super
and
good point. Is that you have to have your hotspot in an area where that data is being transferred in order to benefit from that. So
yeah,
that's going to be a pretty
One
interesting
thing
piece.
One thing I always say is like people just seem to assume that this data is just going to pop out of the air and just appear in their area, but they could be the key one driving it in their area. Go to the businesses, do asset tracking, do door tracking, water leak sensors, all of these things. They could be selling those services to the local area, making money and increasing data, data usage over their hotspots. So that we
Yeah,
need
yeah.
to start that conversation for
Can
sure.
Neil, is your thing ready to talk about yet, or are we still holding off on your?
It's ready. We're
Yep.
just waiting for it to be reviewed in the app stores, and then we'll be releasing it. So, yeah, asset tracking for Helium. That's just QR code scan and go. There's
Yep.
none of this console, none of this integration stuff, none of this learning about decoders, or you just buy a tracker and go. And it is just amazing how much coverage there is out there. I'm not saying it's perfect coverage out there, but if you're in city centres like New York or London, the coverage is insane. At certain points you could be heard by 70 plus hotspots. So, and it goes a step beyond with like 4G as well, because this is blockchain verified data. So we could look at the RSSIs of all of those hotspots that heard this data and confirm it is actually where it says it is. So that's blockchain confirmed data. So it's a step beyond. And yeah, the cost of it is unbelievable compared to the others. I mean, the existing 4G systems would be 250 quid for the device, or dollars roundabout, and then you'll pay for the service of that, which is another $20 a month, and then you'll pay for a SIM card contract on top of that, which is another 5 to 10. We're talking about the whole service being $30-$40 a year for a device.
Yeah,
That's
and the
everything.
device is what,
And then the
$70?
device itself, yeah, $50 to $60, yeah, which is just
really,
a magnitude cheaper.
it's similar to the old Tabs app, right? With the scan the QR code, the tab gets logged into the app, and then you can track it. I know we were talking about it recently. Now, I use the Tab app like a year and a half ago when there wasn't that much coverage. Didn't have a great experience back then. Also, the tabs themselves were the ones I had were not the best. But now I see your post. The coverage is incredible. With the amount of redundancy of hotspots out there, there's very few spots that have no coverage. You're going to be.
I mean, I walk around. I walk around my local area, walking the dog for an hour every day, and it follows my exact path. Dave's done a test of it as well. That he's gone down all through the motorways, all the way from Birmingham, Sheffield to London and back, wasn't it, Dave?
Not Nottingham to London and back, yeah.
Nottingham to London and back.
And I came back the long way to get different route data, and the coverage is pretty good. Some areas are down to one hotspot, but I saw 20 plus hotspots pinging off in some places. So yeah, the coverage is wildly different from how it was not so long back.
Yeah.
And I think half of those problems that you've had is like the previous times is join problems, because there's so few hotspots servicing an area. So I think it was like really, really abusing the battery. But now it's just so good. You just instantly work. The second you turn the tab on, I get a week's worth of battery out of it. Week and a half, maybe 2 weeks. So, but the key thing is with the asset tracking app is that it will work with any LoRaWAN tracker. So any manufacturer, if you want to use the Oysters or you want to use any of them, they'll all work with it. So we're not just limited to one device, which is great. And we've got manufacturers at the same time saying that they want to push things forward and help develop trackers for us. So, some of the new tech is even cheaper on the battery, which means that you can go for months at a time without charging it in a very small form factor, which is just immense. Yeah. I'm so excited to get on this journey,
It's super. That's a great point. Is for a lot of folks, they got into this for the H&T earnings on the mining side, not knowing that they were going to be exposed to this whole world of IoT that I think in the long run is going to be bigger than any earnings you can get from H&T. It will require a lot more work than just putting up a miner, even if putting up a miner on a mountain. But if we think about this kind of tidal wave or tsunami of information that's coming from this Internet of Things kind of ecosystem, man, if you got lucky enough to get a Helium miner anywhere between a year ago and a year from now, you're going to be so far ahead of what everyone in the kind of mass adoption world is doing that it can be a game changer. Just requires definitely more work.
Yep.
So super, super cool. Let's see. I've got I'm seeing Anthony Hall. Can we give an idea as to best case scenarios for data? I'm not sure what you're asking, Anthony. Maybe it's just...
It depends on the use case, doesn't it? I mean, there's, remote power monitoring. Most people in the UK pay for their power meters at the moment. It could be the other way around, or water leak sensors, or rat traps, or water flow sensors, or asset tracking. So just general population. As long as you're near population, then you're good. It's a harder use case to get it out in the sticks unless you've got the farmers on board. But generally in city centres, that's where the data is going to be easiest to grow.
Yeah, and that's a good point too. Is right now I'm seeing that the network or the use of the network is still kind of chunky. Like what you're doing, Neil, with the TrackPack stuff is making it way easier. But the network itself seems to be going, and I think this is expected, going kind of up and down. And I'm seeing some of my devices not work and then work again and come back on. And I think that's a function of not having got to light hotspots yet. But it's like if you're putting devices on the network right now, I would say expect for there to be a little turbulence or variability or the rest of it. And like you're still in the learning phase. Like it's not ready for prime time as far as I can tell. It's getting there, but it's not there yet.
I think your experience over the last week, Nick, has kind of highlighted that your struggles with data and getting it through the console and finding a lack of documentation. It's really built for geeks and engineers at the moment. Whereas what Neil's done is he's taken that and taken away all the pain to make it simple and consumer ready.
Yeah, no, it's awesome.
I always describe the Helium network as like the Amazon Web Services. It's the building blocks for everything like Netflix, but we need these managed service providers to come on top, build these applications, and then make it easy for the end consumer. So I wanted to push that on, and that's why we decided to do this. It is easy to do. It's a very simple app, but it's just simplified so much that it's meant that the end user can just onboard and use it. And that's what we need more of.
Yeah, totally. Because right now for the normal person, it's not there. You do have to learn, as you said, about the data coming off the sensor, which is an uplink, and the uplink goes to a decoder on the console, and then it goes through an integration, then it goes to, and it's just like, holy smokes, there's a lot going on. I just want to know where my cat is or dog or whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That damn Helium video showed me I could track a dog. Why can't I do it yet? Come on.
It's coming. So as part of that, I mean, on my side, if you guys are paying attention, I've been doing this, and everyone on this call has, but I've been doing this water sensor project and then also the people counter project. So you're going to see on the Gristle King side, I'm going to show you as much as I can figure out about the engineering piece. But if you just want to use the network, someone like Neil is going to be a much better kind of resource for you to just use it if you don't want to learn all this stuff. So I think it's important that we give everybody all the options, and then you kind of choose your own adventure. So super cool stuff there. Neil, you got this Sensecap M2. Do you want to take a crack at showing us what it looks like?
Yeah, I was going to be at the office today, but I decided not to. But so I've got my video up. If anyone wants to watch it, just type my name into YouTube. But I got one of the data-only M2s. But this is the exact same hardware as it's going to be on the light hotspots. So it's crazy, some of the stats. Like it's only got 128 mega RAM. But then, they've upgraded it to things like power over Ethernet. So, no more plugs, just built into a nice little tiny unit that's a lot cheaper and a lot easier to run. And yeah, some hardware specs of inside. It's still the 1302. It's just a much smaller board with a much lower power draw. So it just looks like a great little unit, and it's nice to see that this is the future of what light hotspots are going to be. This one's like data only, so it'll only do data over the network, but the only difference really is the ECC key. So
this one doesn't have
to expect. This one doesn't, but this one actually does. But they sent me a production unit with one in, but it shouldn't do because it's only a data only. But yeah, the only difference is you can get these in 5G and that there's an ECC key. So this thing's pretty much what to expect from the M2 that they've released. So, if you've got a use case and you don't want to wait for hotspots and you just want to use data over the network, this is a fantastic choice. Like the availability of parts is more expensive than this thing is altogether. So, it's a great option like the Draginos if you want to use the network without waiting for hotspots or you don't care about POC.
Right.
Out of curiosity, have you done any power testing on it to see how many watts it takes?
I haven't, but I bought the tools to do that. So that's one of the videos I wanted to do.
I assume with the lower spec usage for people like you, Gristle, who go out and do off-grid stuff, the power usage should theoretically drop, and you can probably use smaller solar panel, smaller battery.
Yeah,
exactly. Well, they actually accept nano SIM as well. So this means that you literally need to power one unit. You don't have to worry about an external router. You can do it all from this one device. And where we're going to light gateways, it doesn't matter about relays. So you can just pop a SIM in and it will use hardly any data.
Oh, that's going to be pretty cool. It's super cool to see the whole kind of market react to what the requirements or requests of kind of the community are. And that's like, there's nothing really formal about that. It's just, as all of us have talked to manufacturers and, they're like, oh, should I do a regular hotspot? It's like, no, you need to do a light hotspot. You need to drop the power requirements down as much as you possibly can. And if you can integrate in a backhaul to it, the cell modem, then that's like a money shot for an off-grid. You can chuck that thing anywhere with a solar panel and a battery, and it's good. Especially
one of my things that I've always wanted to do is have a kit ready that you could just turn up to a business and put it on their roof. Yeah. And I think now with light hotspots, we're getting there.
Yeah.
Finally,
we're definitely getting closer.
More so in San Diego than Aldershot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we're lucky with all the sun here. I think I've run like a 15-watt panel and a 6 amp hour battery, and that's not quite enough, but it's pretty close, and it's tiny. And a couple extra watts, a couple extra amp hours, and you're good. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, in Canada, you gotta. Sorry, Dave.
200 watt panel, and 200 amp hour battery.
Come back to San Diego.
But last time I came, it was raining.
That's a good point. You came the 2 days of the year that it rained. That's funny. Let's see. Joe Brown. Okay, talk about how Sensecap is letting our miners flatline for weeks. I think this is a super good point, Joe, and all the rest of you, is that the network is still new. These companies are still figuring this stuff out. And as crazy as it sounds, no one has done this before, where they're putting all these different companies onto one blockchain and allowing them to onboard after going through the various steps to it. Like, you're still a new area. And so when you see whoever go down, whether it's Bobcat or Sensecap or Rack or whatever it is, the M2s, and even like, that's to be expected. I would expect for the next, and you guys can kind of come up with your own estimates, but I'm expecting for the next like 2 to 6 months, it's still going to be a little bit of a shit show. It'll get better and better and better. And sometime in 2023, we'll have a stable, pretty badass network. But until then, it's going to be like, it mostly works most of the time, and every so often be frustrating. I don't know. What do you think, Neil?
I think we're going to have a couple of weeks of transition for sure, while they finalize it. If you remember when validators went live, and many people here probably might not remember that, but we had that kind of period where it just took a little bit of fine adjusting.
Yep.
But the fact that hotspots aren't syncing the chain anymore means data is going to be, so robust. And the only thing you ever really need to do is restart the hotspot or reset the software on the hotspot. So there should be really simple options to do to get things working. It's just off or on, rather than I wonder if it's syncing.
Is the issue here that they can't deal with the syncing in the blockchain as it is at the moment. So when we move to light gateways, there's a good chance things will be better. So are they running out of storage? What's going on with them that means they're flatlining for weeks on end? Is it something that the manufacturer can't actually do anything about? It's just a function of the size of the blockchain has reached.
Yeah. No, that's always the thing. I see people getting on Twitter and they'll tag me or you, or like, why is my hotspot down? It's like, it's going to be up and down until we get onto light hotspots, and then it should be a lot better, and we'll have new challenges to sort out, and we should be able to sort them out pretty quickly, and then it'll just get better and better and better. But for right now, you're still in like the Model T days, and you want a Lamborghini, or you want a Toyota. Like, we're still in the Model T days. It's not there yet.
I thought it was a Lambo we wanted.
Yeah, well, maybe someone wants a Lambo. It's like, between that and a Toyota Tacoma, give me the Tacoma every time. That thing's actually useful. Let's see. I'm looking for sensors for this water fountain project. So if you are and these projects that I'm doing, kind of shifting a little bit to the GK stuff, are meant to be as kind of open source and as sharing as possible. So I know that I'm kind of putting in the work and figuring this stuff out. And I've got a local guy here, Dirk Beer on Discord, who's helping me out. But if any of you watching this see it and you're like, oh, I'm a water treatment guy, as I think one dude is, or like, I know about this sensor, or you should check out this company, like, let me know. I want these things to be as useful as possible for everyone. And I'm happy to do all the kind of work and buy the sensors and figure that stuff out so that we can all learn together. So yeah, if you have got a water sensor that you want me to check out, let me know. Let's see, Neil on the Sensecap M2, we did that. And then the people counter stuff. I think there's some pretty interesting stuff here, guys, in the sense that I got these people counters, put them out. The city of San Diego, initially, their park rangers were really excited about them. And these are people counters that count the number of people on sometimes remote trails, sometimes really busy local trails. And then there was this like super rapid reversal where the park rangers were psyched on it. And then all of a sudden I got this email that said, hey, we are no longer interested in this. Thanks for whatever, letting us know. And I was like, dude, what happened?
Wow.
And it turns out that there was this, San Diego stood up a privacy advisory board about 4 days before I started talking to the park rangers. And when he went to his boss, I'm not sure what happened because they haven't told me the whole story, but I think they went to their IT department and the IT guy said like, hey, no new devices on San Diego at all until we sort out this privacy thing, because San Diego has had a problem with like the traffic light counters. So it's an interesting piece on the sensor side in the US. I know in the UK, you basically have kind of less rights over your privacy. But at least in the US, like we freak out about privacy sometimes when it's convenient for us to freak out. So it's something to think about with like if you're deploying sensors and you're looking at these projects, is that you may have to deal with that. Yeah.
No, it seems a bit crazy given what the sensor is. All it is recording traffic. It's not recording any details of people, is it? So,
and then you got to look at companies like Walmart, haven't you? They're using it every time you walk in their stores. They know. Yeah, it's already done. Private entities are already doing it. You know.
Totally. And I think it's one of those things where it's government versus private. Where private, it's for Walmart, it's useful. That's actionable data that has value to them. And there's no repercussion because you're going on a private property. But on the public side, because it's a government thing, they are really hesitant to use new technology. And so, part of what I think all of us can do is help anyone understand what's going on with the Helium network and explain like, hey, this is just counting like if someone went left to right. It's not counting what race, gender, color, sex, any of those things, not counting anything about them, just whether or not a human or a human-sized thing went by.
Yeah, so perhaps they're thinking that it's recording some of that data when they don't know about it, right? Yeah, like they maybe they think there's a camera or something built in, and just counting people.
Yep. Yeah. No, it was a crazy thing for me because I was super excited. I had all these guys like fired up, like, they've done it before. And that was the other crazy thing. They're like, we've done this before, but the equipment was pretty expensive, so we just kind of. I think they had a couple of vandalism incidents. They're just like, we just dropped it. This would be great. It's like, yep, I think so too. But
they'll come around.
Yeah.
Crazy.
And then I've got this little thing, this Helium health tracker project. This was like a crazy idea that I fired off, I don't know, one night or one morning, where I thought it'd be cool if we all worked together to build some kind of, or to set out instructions for someone to build their own health tracker that ran on Helium. And I'm thinking that would track where you are, so like how many steps you went or how you exercised, as well as maybe your blood pressure or heart rate or anything that you could think of. I thought it'd be a cool thing for us to do together as a community, but I haven't pushed a ton of effort into it.
There's a Laura watch out there, so you could do it really easy. Yeah, it does blood monitor, pulse monitoring and tracking and steps and stuff. So it could be a fun project. Yeah,
it's like crazy. Oh, rad! I thought it'd be cool to do who's the healthiest person in Helium. Which should be like a fun thing, and then figuring out how do you define that, because obviously for some it's going to be different for everybody, but also making it so you could build a little local community of all your Helium peeps. I know here in San Diego we got 9,000 hotspots. There's got to be more than a couple people who are like, I'll whatever, compete against you on anything, whether it's weight lost or trails ran or
many years ago I thought about having a smart weighing scale.
Yeah.
So you could put a sensor and a scale and use the Helium network to track everybody's progress. Online slimming world.
Yeah, I think it's super cool. I've been working on the bakery weight scale with Parley Labs. It's been like a project that is 900th on both of our lists for about a year and a half
now. Those lists.
But eventually,
that's the thing with sensors. There are just so many opportunities, so many options for measuring things and providing data. It's down to the imagination of the people to come up with the use cases and put these sensors together, because they're not very difficult. Everything's pretty modular. You can put a whole bunch of sensors in to get quite complex data fairly easily, and then all you're using the Helium network for is the result of that data. So we really do need people to start looking at sensors and what they can be used for.
Yeah, it's an exciting time. It's like it's kind of like you're a caveman and you get in a car before anyone else. And so you got to figure out how the car runs, and you got to build the roads. But once you build the roads and figure out how to run the car, like, man, you've got a significant advantage over every other caveman on the planet. So if you like advantages in money and business, then this is a really radical thing to do. And technology and frustration and struggle, this is a pretty cool thing to do.
It's one of those things, isn't it? That I could build what I think an agricultural sensor will need, but until you go to the farmer and the grower and say, well, what actually affects your bottom line, what actually affects we're not going to be able to build the right sensors. So I could take a stab in the dark and do it, or we could find people that are interested in that use case and that have a thing, and then you can just pull all these sensors in and say this is what we need, and take that on to be an app. You could beta these things quite quickly with tools like Grafana to show some basic graphs, or DataCake or Tag.io. But then when you want to get serious with it, you can take that model and say, right, let's build an app, let's build a website. And that's what we've been doing.
One of the things that excites me about this is not so much on the sensor side, but on the actuator side. So we're talking a lot about collecting data, but on the flip side, you can actually use the Helium network to actuate. So you can open gates, for example, or put water in a trough to feed your pigs that are 3 miles away. You can do it remotely without having to go out, and you can use the sensors to work out whether there's water in there or not, and then send a command to do it. You could do it by closed loop control, but you may want it only to be done at certain times. There's just opportunities for everywhere that you look. It's just as Neil says, making people aware and getting those use cases from people to start building the sensors that are needed, rather than ones we all geek out about.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun for me to figure this stuff out. Dave, you want to walk us through? I'm not sure if we'll figure out how to share the screen here. Kind of the health of the network. I think this will help people understand maybe what's going on with the network and what they can expect.
Let me see if I can share my screen and see what happens when I try that.
Yeah. Let's see. There's some magic there. I'm seeing something.
Okay. Is it visible? Right. So
it's visible for me. Yeah. I'll drop it off so you can see what you're seeing. Right. There we go. Okay.
So now hopefully we've got the Helium analytics page.
Yep.
So
all of us
what I've done. Yeah, what I've done is I've had a look over the last week to see what's been going on, ready for the show. It's a bit disappointing actually, because things have been relatively stable for the last week. So if I go back to last Sunday and look at the earnings summary, I've looked. I'm not going to go through it all. Over the last week, the number of HNT minted every day has been pretty much where it should be. Everything's been very stable, whereas previously we've seen wild swings. So last Monday we see it's down at 95% of what it should be. But if we come further in the week, yesterday it compensated. It's gone up to 101%. So overall across the week things have been pretty stable. Again, when you look at the reward distribution, which shows who's earning what. I'll just whiz the scale back down a bit, so we can see who's earning what has stayed pretty stable as well. So again, if I whiz back to this time last week, the only interesting thing here is this peak's gone last Monday. I noticed it last week that this peak has disappeared, but it's come back.
What does that mean for the average kind of watcher who's like, all right, cool yellow line, man, cool line, bro.
So what it means is within this range. So what 0.6 to 0.14 HNT per day. This is the number of hotspots that have actually achieved that number. So there's like 12,000 hotspots at each of these points through here. Oh, sorry, no, other way around. So we've earned 200 HNT at each of these points across the network. And what I've noticed is this peak that has been there since day one, effectively. Yep. It disappeared 2 weeks ago and kind of flattened out. And I'm wondering if it's to do with some of the work that's been done on the deny list.
I was going to say, I reckon that's the deny list for sure, right?
Huh.
Yeah,
there's been some big updates.
Yeah, so a portion of the people that are earning around the average that are on the deny list have suddenly been culled, which takes this peak away. And then it's taken a little while for the network to stabilise again and redistribute earnings. So if we come to sort of later in the week, you can see the peak starting to re-emerge, and I think it's almost a nice curve shape now. So, as Neil says, I think it's to do with some work that's been done on the deny list for hotspots that are earning around the average. So, it's worth further investigation. But again, everything's pretty stable. The shape of the curve is fairly stable. We've still got a number of hotspots that are earning more than 1 HMT per day. Slight disclaimer: one of mine is currently sitting around here at 0.8. So one isn't out of the
Look at that flex. Look at that flex.
Look at that flex.
However, when we start looking at some of the other data, we've got a hotspot here earning 2.173.
They got to be cheating, right? That's cheating. Let's shut down the network. Get our torches out.
Yeah. So it's worth investigation, shall we say?
Yeah.
And we can see that as we go through. So since we last talked, Nick, I've added a couple of pages here.
Nice.
So we've got the daily challenges, I think, which I showed before. This gives an insight into what's happening. This particular graph. This is the number of challenges that are sent during the day, and the number of challenges where there's a receipt. So as we know, hotspots get challenged, and if they have a successful receipt, they will beacon. And what we're seeing in this chart here, probably more in this chart, is the percent of challenges that result in a beacon is around 50%.
And that's the money shot right there. That is the money shot.
Tell me about why that's important.
It's important because people will gauge their activity based on the published POC interval of 950 blocks. So they're expecting something to happen every 950 blocks. What this shows is actually it's not happening every 950 blocks on average across the network. It's happening every 1,900 blocks. So the period suddenly goes from 10 or 12 hours up towards 24 hours before anything happens. So before they'll issue a beacon.
Right. Okay. So this is super helpful. Is that if you're seeing one beacon a day, you're right on track, right, with what the rest of the network is doing, even if you were expecting to see 2 beacons a day.
Yeah, absolutely. And that follows through. So I've got down here the distribution that we talked about previously, where the vast majority of hotspots are only getting challenged once a day.
Yep.
And successfully challenged 262,000 out of 500 something thousand, 600,000 that are participating. So you can see where you fit on this scale. And then you've got somebody up here.
Yep.
That's got 5 challenges.
Yep.
5 challenges that were made, but none of them were successful. So the successful ones appear down here.
Interesting.
And moving that forwards, what I've done now is I've done similar slides for beacon requests. So the numbers on here will follow from the previous page. So the total number of beacons on this day will be the same number as the total number of successful challenges. So it kind of follows from one page to another.
Okay.
And then we see again a similar thing where not all beacons result in witnesses. Although the numbers are much closer together here.
Yeah. So you can have a beacon, but it may not be heard, or you can have a beacon and it gets heard, but for some reason it gets lost in whatever transit. That's what I'm understanding?
Yeah. So the most probable cause is either it's not heard or there's a relay somewhere in the circuit that means that witness that beacon never gets heard. It never gets reported back. And what I've done, again, it's around 85 to 90% of the time you get 0 witness beacons. And then I've got down here the distribution of beacons. Now, again, this is an area where you look at it and go, yeah, that's good. I'm expecting 1 to 2 per day, and that's where the majority of the activity is. But what the hell's going on up here? How has this person got 21 beacons in a day?
Yeah, no, let's get a drone strike on that guy.
Yep, yeah, absolutely. So
That's
can
the
see
offline challenges thing, isn't it? Just where there's so many
yeah,
offline hotspots, it's targeting the area more, so that one online hotspots get more. There's a couple
yeah,
of gamers doing that, but that changes with light hotspots.
yeah.
Okay.
But again, you look at it and we talk about gaming and it's one person, it's one hotspot out of 700,000.
Super
And
nice. Yeah.
you come down here and you see 116, 17.9. So there's maybe 200 that could potentially be suspect. Probably only these ones here. So maybe only 20 or 30 that would warrant really an investigation. And then beyond that, for each beacon, I've got a distribution of witnesses. So when you look at this from way back when, although the number of witnesses was significantly more,
Yep.
most of the witnesses were down in the low numbers.
Yep.
But what we're seeing now is because the density of hotspots, as we talked about earlier with the coverage, most beacons are heard by 14 witnesses. So most beacons are heard by the maximum number of witnesses. And then we've got all the way down to zero what's going on across there. So we can see that the network is pretty healthy where it's working in terms of people being able to
Yeah.
hear each other.
Dave, show me.
So,
We got a question in the chat from Matt, and we got Joe. Joe Brown is obviously upset with his Sensecaps, but Matt's got a decent question. Are there actually 700,000 hotspots? I think we covered this in the interview we did, but let's just take a look and see how many are out there right now.
If we look at what happened yesterday, so this is the number of hotspots that actually received any sort of reward yesterday, POC or data. So 514,506
Right.
received a reward of some description, and that's versus the 750,000 was the latest milestone on Twitter yesterday or the day before.
Yep.
So again, as we talked before, there's 250,000 hotspots that are somewhere doing nothing. Some of that will be down to natural wastage. I've certainly had one or two that have been offline for a few days while I've been doing some maintenance and upgrades.
Yeah.
But 250,000 is still a large proportion of hotspots to not be earning anything.
Yeah.
I guess some of those Sensecaps that are sitting idle for weeks on end.
And quite a few of us have boxes of Nebras as well that are just doing nothing.
Neil, all of mine are Nebras and they're all performing lovely.
You're outnumbered here, buddy. You're outnumbered.
I can bring a box over and show you if dead one.
A 0.8 per day in the field and a 0.5 per day on top of my house. Yeah,
okay, so you've got some anomalous data there. But I think that's an interesting piece is that there's a couple of these manufacturers are flat out gamers, right? We just got one of them knocked off the network, but a lot of these folks are, and I think in Nebra's case and Parley's case, not that Parley's a manufacturer, but they are folks who just made either a couple bad decisions or made a couple mistakes. And in most cases, they're trying to do a great job. And in a lot of, sometimes they're just failing, right? But I don't think we have, in the case of Nebra, I don't think we have an actual bad actor. I think we've got probably some management issues and some kind of figuring quality control stuff, enforcing stuff, from the buy pressure side. I don't think we have a bad actor in Nebra or in Parley. We certainly do in other places.
No, I don't think there's any malicious intent there. I just want to clarify that. I think it was just the product itself was the quality control and design, quite honestly. I can show you in a minute here. Just versus Nebra versus Syncrobit. The boards themselves, and Nebra's got these USB dongles and USB cables everywhere. It's just a weirdly designed hotspot that I think a lot of people's Nebras are functioning properly, but I think there's a large amount that there's a bigger chance of issues with them. Nothing malicious intent there. It's just the way it is.
Dave, can you sort on your tool yet by manufacturer to see how many are active and how many are not, or no, not yet?
No, I've not got that level of detail. I think it's available in the ETL though.
Yeah.
So there's some reports in there, although I think the ETL's had some issues
just
over
some.
the last over the last couple of months. They restored it, and some of the tables haven't been restored properly, and it's still a bit more difficult to use than it was before.
Yeah.
But I think the data's in there. But yeah, it's something that I want to do. I've got my whip out to get some of the features that need to be done soon. The by maker and by country a little bit further down the list. But I want to give that reward distribution a shot with different manufacturers, so you can say, okay, this is deeper, and they're quite clearly outside the parameters of the normal distribution. And we know that deeper is already not there anymore. That's why I use them rather than throwing mud at anybody else.
Yeah. Dig it. And then we've got something, I think the last thing I've got on the notes, so we can kind of open it up to whatever questions or comments you guys have, is this thing where I get, and you guys probably get this as well, like how do I report gaming hotspots? And there's two sites that I've used. One of them is suspots.com, suspots.com, and that's a great one. And then the other one is crowdspot.io. That's the one Helium stood up.
Yeah.
Because we were using like some version on the Heroku app for a while, and then Neil corrected me.
Yeah, that's like the pre-staging one where they want to show it off on beta, and then they just whack a domain on it. So it's like the way you can share a project before you've aligned it. So it's not fully on chain yet, so I don't think you can vote on it. But what's really great about CrowdSpot is the whole, you can look at the RSSIs and the data, and it tells you what's good and what's not.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, the other way is obviously you can raise an issue on the GitHub. It's a bit more technical, I guess, for people to go into GitHub and start raising issues. But you can go in there, raise an issue, and point out the particular hotspot or group of hotspots that you want to identify, and it will go through a process where somebody will review it, and then. If it's found to be a true reflection of gaming, then those people get nailed by a software update or an update to the denial list itself.
I think CrowdSpot and SusSpots are a good place to start. Denial list, the GitHub is probably a more advanced stage. I think there's been some issues I say issues, but people say, well, my neighbor's making more than me, so they're cheating. So I'm going to put a GitHub issue in. It's like, well, no. Slow things down a little. Do research on CrowdSpot, SusSpots. Check out their...
My neighbour's neighbour is making 0.8 HNT per day. Must be suspect.
Cheater.
You see my PR release.
Neil, are you the one sharing the screen on the CrowdSpot?
Yeah, I thought I'd show it. So what's great about this tool is it shows you what the data is for like RSSI, but it also tells you how to read the charts, what is legitimate and what looks abnormal. So you can say this is a deny list hotspot that I pulled up. You could say if this is good or bad data, and this chart, for example, shows you what a legitimate setup should look like and what looks abnormal, and you can see it's a very small cluster of hotspots. So that's why they've ended up on the deny list. But there's another cluster nearby, but neither are talking to each other. And then it's just great to be able to like look at the data. So do this before you put an issue in. It just means it saves everyone a lot of time, and that this site eventually will have the ability to vote with a very, very small burn fee in DC to say if this is abnormal or not. So when this is happening, we'll be able to see a list of contested hotspots or hot hotspots that people that are building these lists for the deny list can choose to investigate those hotspots and act on them quickly. So, yeah.
Super cool. Right on. Dig it. Yeah, I think that brings us back to this kind of community piece, is that we tend to think that it's like someone else's problem to fix this, but it's all of our problem to fix. And we all kind of work on whatever it is we're good at and put our shoulder to the wheel where we can. And I know for those of us who are not kind of engineering types, it can seem super frustrating. It's like, well, where can I help? I don't know how to do this, that, or the other. Like I'm, taking this JavaScript course. It's like, dude, it's going to be years before I figure out Java to be useful. But in the meantime, Yeah, there's like figuring out how do you deploy sensors, or looking for business use cases, or finding pieces of land you can deploy hotspots to provide better coverage. There's a lot of different ways to contribute to the network, and they're not all kind of coding centric. Although the geek factor is well rewarded here.
Yeah, and there's so much to do if you're a geek. You could be hardware, software, sales or dashboards. And like Dave, he's suddenly doing a load of analytics data on top. There's room for everyone here. I've known companies that started antenna firms, they started sensor firms. There's just room for everyone because it's so new. It's just pick a path you like and get involved.
Yeah, yeah. There's something coming. I'm working with a company right now. We're kind of discussing how to do it, but they've got something where they put a little piece of code on your router, and that allows you to remotely access the hotspot's dashboard. Now, I'm not sure if the hotspot manufacturers are going to make it so that you can remotely access that dashboard when we go to light hotspots or something else. But for those of us who run off grids, and especially those of us who don't have the ability to get into the hotspot itself, that is going to be a little bit of not a little bit, that'll be a game changer for folks to be able to kind of manipulate their hotspot from afar. And whether you're off grid or it's in, Aunt Sally's house, that's a pretty cool thing coming down the pipe.
Yeah, it's one of those interesting ones. Like, obviously, where we're from, Helium status. How do you check the status on these new hotspots? Because they're not directly connected anymore, so you can't ping the port. So it's like, how do you know if they're up? And the easiest way is data, but there needs to be something that's a bit more responsive so we can know if the software's crashed, for example, without having to go there with data. But yeah, it'd be fun to see what technologies come out,
Yeah, send a dummy sensor to everybody. Not a dummy sensor,
yeah.
Something that pings their hotspot and charge them 50 quid for it.
Yeah, that's what Dis91's got a tool that does that with his WIO terminal, that you can put it near it and send it data, and then it tells you if it's up or down. I mean, that's probably the easiest way to monitor these things. But I generally just think, like, going forward, you just need to be on a Wi-Fi plug and you're fine. As long as you can reboot the thing, that should be all you need, right?
Because that's all you can do anyway, right?
I've got a mapper running constantly, and whenever I go into Explorer, I can be like, oh yeah, it's transmitting data, no problem. Yeah, it's not doing any mapping at the moment, but it's sitting in my car in my driveway. Yeah. It's just on, and yeah, I'm paying for those data credits, but it's so cheap that who cares?
Exactly.
Yeah, I think one of our colleagues bought 500,000 data credits yesterday for $3.
Yeah, yeah, unbelievable, isn't it?
Last him a while.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think I was moving from one console to the other, and it's like I lost 900,000 data credits. Like, it's like $9, no big deal.
Someone the other day, I won't name names, bought I think $900 worth of data credits by accident. So they've got data credits.
So they're good. They're 87. Yeah. Oh, that's cool. It's funny how this whole thing is going. Is there anything else that you guys see that's coming down the pipe that is kind of new and unusual or interesting to you in the world of Helium?
New and unusual.
Oh, Neil, you got to smile. What's going on, dog?
Well, it's that whole Nova thing, now it's the Nova Foundation. No one seems to cotton on that they're being invested by these companies that own spectrum. Nokia owned spectrum, Dutch Telecom owned spectrum, Liberty Global owned spectrum. I mean, it sounds like we're going to get European 5G soon. And I think that's just going to be a game changer. It's not just a US thing anymore. It's going to be another rush to get these things out into these areas and actually get data usage on board. So it's just one of those things that I'm so excited for, but there's obviously no news what's happening yet. And I'm sure we'll hear about more of about that soon. But yeah, I just think it's so exciting for us that we as Europeans can finally start having that 5G conversation. Well, because they don't have to go out and buy spectrum. Yeah. They've got companies that invested, so we could just use their spectrum.
Really? Okay, that's the implication. I missed that. Oh, super cool.
Yeah. So there was always this talk in the European region we would have to buy spectrum to use this 5G structure. But if their investments are from Dutch Telecom, Liberty Global, which is like a huge provider over here, and they're also O2 now, I think. So we've got these spectrums that we could be using. So I'm just so excited to get another wave of hotspots out there that aren't just LoRa, it's 5G. And
yeah, I mean that's a great thing. That's a question I get all the time is what can I do with my 5G miner? And at least here in the US right now, not much. You can set it up, but there's no one's roaming onto them. And until Helium or Nova or Helium Foundation or whatever it is now kind of signs those roaming agreements, 5G are going to be useless. And then as soon as those agreements get signed, it's going to be another gold rush, right? And that's kind of the thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
finding those primo
exactly.
spots by a Starbucks or by a stadium or something like that. That's going to be the next one for sure. And of course, Canada's left out again.
America's hat. America's hat.
Yeah.
It's super curious how all that stuff is going down. I talked to a Canadian client the other day, and it's really cool to see. For me, like, the consults have shifted from, like, mom and pop putting up 10 hotspots in their neighborhood to this one was a Canadian WISP up in some, I don't know if it's a remote valley or not. I don't want to insult them, but it was just like, oh, these guys totally get it. They're putting hotspots on all their towers, and they had great questions about how to map out coverage and how they balanced out coverage with earnings. But I think what we're seeing is, back in May last year, I was talking with WISPs here in San Diego, and they're like, I don't know about this thing. It looks kind of crazy. I'm not going to do it. And now we're seeing, the leading edge of this kind of mass adoption starting to come in and saying, oh yeah, this is going on our site because it provides coverage.
Yeah,
It's one of
contact me. He wants 200 tower installs, and he wanted to talk to me about all sorts of radio things that were way beyond me. And he's used the ETL. He's got loads of data from it. He's done loads of calculations using his radio knowledge to work out exactly how many hotspots he can hear from a particular location, and it's moving fast into a much more advanced state.
Yeah, we're starting to get like serious engineers outside of like the ultra geek kind of Erlang centric or whatever it was for Nova involved. I know this local guy Dirk here in San Diego. He's looking like we're working on a couple projects together, and he's just been doing this kind of stuff outside of Helium for 20 or 30 years. And so when you talk to him, he's like, oh, there's a couple things to shift, but all of a sudden we get decades and decades of experience applied to Helium. And I think we're going to see this like explosive growth happen sometime later this year, which is pretty cool.
But the thing is that the end users are still a bit nervous. The geeks that have come from radio to come to here are really nervous because there's no SLA. But I always remind those geeks, like, the easiest way I remember it is, Linux is open source, but Red Hat offer enterprise support. And that's what we as a community can grow, that managed service layer on top to get these devices in their hands and try it. Because once you do, it just blows your mind. Like, when you actually start going about mapping and realizing that you're being heard from, 20, 40 kilometers away, and in number, it's just immense to see that you think, oh, well, instead of paying $1 million for an air quality sensor, we can do all of this for a couple of £100 and do it in scale, not just one big unit. It's just crazy to see.
It's rad. I mean, it's also pretty cool to see all the companies following and having learned from Helium's issues with figuring out how to get the community to stand up manufacturers to build the units. Is we're looking at Planet Watch or WeatherXM or whatever, pick your project, and seeing them, like WeatherXM in particular is holding back, and they're saying like, hey, we don't want to do anything crazy until we have the manufacturing stuff sorted out. Or maybe it's Metrics. I think Demo's pretty squared away, but they saw this insane demand, and now they're learning from it and seeing like, okay, I can have a smoother rollout. So yeah, pretty rad stuff. Let's see what else is going on. I got these Gristle King NFTs almost ready to launch, so those are going to be access to the GK courses and the Gristle crew for a month, and then I'm trying to figure out like what else can I put under the NFT that has access to it. But it's like a side project that's been super fun to explore that whole world, and certainly Helium kind of kickstarted my entry into NFTs just by getting back into crypto. So pretty cool stuff to see there.
I hope I can have some golden wings on mine.
I don't think you're going to get to choose. We're talking about it right now. Like, there are all these like crazy. So we had a graphic designer at Paleo Treats, and she recently left. Paleo Treats is the other company that I've got. And so I had her kind of tasked on this little side project to help me design all these NFTs. So like, hey, here's the G with the crown. Here's what I want. And so she came up with like cowboys and spaceships and all kinds of stuff. So you get a little bit of everything. But we're deciding, is it going to be better to let people kind of pick the one they want, or to buy it and then have it be revealed later? And it's like a fun, surprising thing.
It's cool, man.
So, yeah.
I see. I see our t-shirts are going to get less unique as well. You've done a load more for people, haven't you?
Yeah. I just did a new set of t-shirts. The color is different. I don't know if I've got. I think the one I've got on is the older one. It's like a little darker. And then I got new hoodies as well, and the hoodies are much lighter. So no one's gonna get the original like super heavyweight hoodie. Those things are like $30 or $40 each just to buy them fucking blank.
I'll have to get one back to you at some point.
Yeah. Oh, because I sent you a couple, right? Or did I? I forget if I sent
you sent me a t-shirt and a hoodie. Yeah, I live in merch from people. It's just really nice when the company comes along and does merch. I'm like, yes, please, sweet. Send me some.
I got to do some track.
I've got a new wardrobe.
Yeah,
I meant to actually wear the sweater today. My bad.
Yeah. Well, next time. I think that's a cool thing. Is Neil and I were talking about this as being a weekly thing where we get together and whether you guys want to come back, or Dave, I think we talked about this being like a weekly kind of check on network health. But I think this could be a cool thing that we can all do together to keep people up to date on what's going on in Helium. I've got the same kind of thing on the Gristle crew. It's much more focused. It's a Zoom call with just me and the folks on the crew. But I think on the public side, we could do a pretty good job of keeping people up to date, because we all get hammered on Twitter all the time. Like, hey, why is this hotspot cheating? Or my hotspot's down? Or what antenna should I buy? And I think we can cover a lot of that stuff in a weekly here.
Well, there's new stuff come out now. Like, I mean, this is probably a topic for another video, but like the Hive Mapper, for example, is it Hive Mapper? Am I saying that?
Yeah. They're in London, but they're not in San Diego. They for some reason they valued London over San Diego. It's very hard for me to believe, but
but cool. I mean, those devices are gonna have like their own token and all that, but they're actually going to be functioning as a Helium mapper. To start, I don't know like if how else they're going to utilize the Helium network, but super cool that like these other projects are starting to utilize Helium too. So I think we're going to see more of that going forward.
Yeah. There's some rad stuff going on. Neil, did you have anything else?
That's what excites me about the sub-DAO stuff. So hopefully that moves on, because these networks can exist totally on Helium and have their own sub token and do all these things. Like I've always joked, like we should be doing Planet Watch over here.
Yes, I was just going to say Planet Watch should be on Helium. That would make so much more sense
with these cheap sensors, and it would be on a scale unimaginable compared to what there is now. And it does good. There's no reason why we couldn't do that in the future, and that sub-DAO thing allows that. It's just immense.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably kind of a cool place to start wrapping it up. Is this Mac Banai has got the question, what will Helium mining look like in 5 years? I don't know. It's certainly, I mean, the first thing is it's certainly not going to be as profitable to run a Helium miner, but it will probably be far more profitable to be able to use the network for everyone else. And we're going to see a transformation in society of the use of data. And a large part of that will be driven by Helium having grown. So it's pretty cool to be a part of it right now, to see like what is
also
possible.
Just like addressing expectations too, as 5 years from now, I mean, I assume with light hotspots being implemented anytime now, device prices should substantially drop by huge margins by 5 years. And the cost to run them will be next to nothing. So expectations from, let's say, an $80 device providing LoRaWAN coverage, what should your expectation be on a return for something that device that cheap, right? So I still think it'll be quite popular in 5 years, but again, expectations.
Yeah.
Those in chat.
It all depends on what the price does, isn't it? If we go up and the data usage goes up, we could hit this single burn-to-mint equilibrium where the price is driven by data usage. And it could be in 5 years that we're still getting a decent return. But it's about putting the effort in now to grow that and make it happen.
Yeah. No, it's rad to see kind of where the whole thing's going to go. And I mean, if HNT goes to 1,000 for whatever reason, game changes again. There's just
exactly.
A lot of variables.
We all retire.
I don't know if I could. Like, there's so much exciting stuff to do. I'm just figuring out this console thing and like looking at the thing in my yard that I'm testing on these people counters and figuring out how it's getting data that transfers into like a visualizable thing is fascinating. So I don't think I could retire not knowing that. Maybe after I know that, but there's always, I mean, just think about like all the crazy use cases and what you can do if you've got sensors everywhere. I think about this local valley that I paraglide in. Right now, a weather station is like $1,000 for a weather station, maybe $1,500 for a nice one with every sensor you can think of. With Helium, you can build your own sensor. And that guy, have you guys seen this guy Fabian that I pushed out on Twitter a couple times? German dude. Maybe. He's printing up his own PCBs. I don't think I have him.
Oh wow.
Oh yeah. He released the designs for these PCBs. Oh, you can't see them. And then you just order it from the manufacturer in China. If you're like me, you order the wrong one, or you order it without everything soldered onto it. So you now have like 20 PCBs that I'm gonna have to learn to solder on. And then he's got all these designs for how you then build a weather station. And I'm guessing the whole thing's going to be like 150, maybe $180. $180 cool. Weather station full featured means that I can put, 50 of these weather stations, maybe do some local fundraising with the paragliding club in this valley. And all of a sudden, any meteorologist that wants to see what happens on a micro level has access to data at a scale that, they couldn't do otherwise, or it'd be like a massive grant for them to write to get all these weather stations. And so we're going to see an understanding of our world really sharpen and come into focus over the next 5 to 10 years. And a large part of that is driven by Helium. So yeah, unretirable right now, Dave Akers.
Okay. So maybe retire from the real job into Helium.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I think that's all I've got. We went over by 21 seconds, which I think that's acceptable. Any last shout outs, anything that people need to know about, go to, etc.? All right, ripping. I will see you guys next week. I'm heading up to Idaho to hang out with Nick Huff up in Lake Street Software Helium Vision for a week, and we're going to talk about rad ag sensors we're doing up there. And then we'll see you next Monday at 9 o'clock Pacific.
Cool.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Lights.